Hello, my friend. Welcome to the broadcast. So, if you're interested in being an exceptional trader, if you're somebody who wants to do really, really well with investments, then it's often said that managing one's emotional and mental state is absolutely crucial. That, I believe, is especially true if you happen to have an investment that is not doing so well, and then you find yourself feeling anxious, overwhelmed, and not really sure what to do. Yeah, in an optimal world, we'd all have a trading plan and we'd stick to that plan without hesitation, but we're human, right? So managing our emotional and mental state is key. So in the interview that follows, we're going to have a conversation with Dr. Kiki Fehling, who's a licensed psychologist and an expert in something called dialectical behavior therapy. Some of the techniques discussed in this interview, I have personally tried myself, and I can vouch for the fact that, at least for me, they work. Okay, without further ado, let's get into the interview. Okay, so we're joined today by Dr. Kiki Fehling. She's a licensed psychologist and she's also an expert in dialectical behavior therapy. Now, we're going to have a really, I think, meaningful, good, useful conversation, but a session like this, right, Kiki, it's not intended to substitute individualized therapy. This isn't medical advice, but I do think that we can definitely have a conversation that might provide some value to people.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, dialectical behavior therapy is a psychotherapy that is practiced with a licensed clinician, but one of the unique parts about it is it offers tons of concrete coping skills, which is I know what we're going to talk about. And it's so you can teach them to people without being in therapy with them. And so it's a really nice way to give people some mental health support without having a therapy relationship.
Okay, well, excellent. So we're going to dive right in to our topic here, which is really just on a big picture basis, the matter of how investors can best cope with losses, be it in the stock market, the cryptocurrency markets, the options markets, whatever financial market or financial instrument somebody happens to be involved with. How can stock market investors, for example, use distress tolerance, maybe resilience building skills, to basically manage those sometimes intense emotional ups and downs and just the financial uncertainty of being invested sometimes?
hmm Yeah, I'm glad we're starting right from here because investment, I will say I'm an expert in DBT and not in investment. So I'm happy we're having this conversation. But I was really excited for it because I think that money things in general, let alone investment, can cause a lot of intense emotions for a lot of people. And we don't usually talk about it in a mental health context. So I think people aren't really used to thinking about it as being an emotional stressor specifically. So I do think you ask the perfect question of when the market goes up, when we lose or gain, even gain money, we might have large emotional reactions. And then losing money, it causes a lot of stress and distress. And so in DBT, we have dozens of skills, as I said, and in four main modules, but one of them we call distress tolerance. And those skills are really about how can we learn how to cope with painful or stressful things in our lives that we can't do anything to change right now, or like things we can't problem solve, or we're just feeling super overwhelmed and so can't solve problems because we don't have our full capacities. So the distress tolerance skills are so useful for coping with those like ups and downs in the market or just investment decisions in general to give us a little bit more power in coping with those the intense things that investment can throw at us. So there are so many distress tolerance skills that I struggle to know where to start. But what I can bring to folks' attention is when you feel most overwhelmed, when you're feeling like you can't think clearly, your thoughts are racing. Sometimes you might feel a lot of physiological agitation in your body. You might be physically stressed. Some people might have the sensation of being like numb or so overwhelmed that they might even feel dissociated or disconnected from themselves. All of those are very normal physiological stress responses in the body. We have been given something in the world that is overwhelming our senses, and we feel like hot, 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 or cold, cold, cold in the sense of numb. And in those cases, there's a set of distress tolerance skills that can be really useful. So when you're panicked and overwhelmed, the set of skills I recommend people go towards is, or consider using at least, is a set of skills we call the TIP skills. So this is an acronym, T.I.P.P. And these skills are essentially nervous system regulation skills. So when the body is stressed, we are entering into the fight or flight response. It's that very stereotypical, the part of our body that protects us when we're under threat, to run away from a threat or to fight a threat to protect ourselves. But when the threat is a market change or losing money, we might not be acutely in danger, or at least there's nothing to run away from. It's not like there's a bear in front of us. There's nothing to fight either, no bear to fight. And so a lot of times those physiological stress symptoms are just overwhelming and not helpful. And the tip skills come in to counter that sympathetic nervous system response and help us instead turn it into a parasympathetic nervous response. So try to help us relax. So the tip skills are a way to use our body's stress systems to help us calm down fast. Before I describe the tip skills, do you have any questions about any of that?
Can you just elaborate briefly when you say the parasympathetic side of one's body, just for people who may not be fully aware, just if you don't mind, just sort of elaborate.
Yeah. Yeah. So that that stress response, that fight or flight response, that's controlled more so by the sympathetic nervous system. This is the part of the nervous system that like activates things for people. It makes your heart rate beat faster. It makes you sweat. It sends the blood out to your limbs so you can run away or you can fight more easily. It's the thing that makes you feel like tense and anxious and agitated. The parasympathetic nervous system is, I want to say the opposite, but it's not quite the opposite. It's the system that works along with, but like contrary to the sympathetic nervous system. Specifically, it helps you calm down. When you're safe, the parasympathetic nervous system helps you feel calm, connect with other people. It helps you be creative. It's the place where we play. It's where we feel safe and grounded. So your heart rate decreases. You aren't sweating. Your body sends blood to your abdomen, so you start doing things like digesting your food and just doing normal body responses. So it's often called the rest and digest system in comparison to the fight or flight response.
Excellent. And so the goal with the tip skills is to help our body naturally move from the sympathetic nervous system, try to really, in a very natural way, get into the parasympathetic part of our
Yes.
system. Okay.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that's exactly right. And normally I like to teach the acronym in order, but it feels relevant to what I was just sharing. The I in the tip stands for intense exercise. And I bring this up here because when we are feeling this stress response, because I'll use the metaphor again, there's a bear in front of us. Our body, to protect itself, wants to run away from that bear. And so when we are super stressed out or anxious by an investment crash or something else that's not a physical, immediate threat in front of us, our body has that same urge. We want to run away, but there's not really anything to run away from. But if we purposefully engage in intense exercise, so whether it's going on a run or even just doing a few minutes of jumping jacks or squats or like wall punches or just moving our bodies in some way to use that physical energy of the stress response, when we stop exercising, when we then stop and rest, it cues our nervous system, our body, our mind that like, oh, wait, we're safe now. So all of the tip skills work like with that stress response, diving into it, and then deactivating it and helping you rest through those systems.
So I is for intense exercise.
Yes.
I'm curious what the T at the very beginning of tip may stand for.
Yeah, so T is actually my favorite. So in addition to being in order, I often start there for that reason. So T stands for temperature, or tip your temperature. But a lot of people, it doesn't fit into the acronym, but a lot of people call this the cold water skill. So this skill is getting at all of the skills, as I said, are getting at this mind-body connection and using our body's nervous system to help us. And this one is using a part of the human body called the mammalian dive reflex, which is a body reflex that mammals have by the name, because we can't breathe underwater. When we go underwater, our parasympathetic nervous system activates in order to slow our heart rates down so that we conserve oxygen. So it's this really amazing thing that key thing here is if you have a cardiac history or any medical problems that might cause cardiac problems, you want to check with your doctor before you use this one. But the skill boils down to putting your face in a bucket of cold water because it makes your body activate that mammalian dive reflex. And I love this one because it really, really works well. It's why you have to be careful if you have cardiac problems. It works so well. But when you are panicked, when you are overwhelmed and just that like stressed, can't think, tense out of your mind, there are few things as effective as cold water for a lot of folks. So I think this makes sense because when people are stressed, there's often the sensation of feeling really hot. And so drinking cold water or taking a cold shower or like putting a cold compress on your neck, all of these things feel really good. But then the dive reflex specifically is activated by having your eyes and your nose underwater. And so that's why you can just do it using like a bowl of water, of ice water usually, or you can take like a wet paper towel and put it over frozen vegetables and like put it over your face as long as the mucous membranes are covered. That is usually enough to activate that reflex and can really help folks slow their heart rates, slow their breathing, and get back to a calmer, grounded place.
Excellent. So we've got temperature, we've got intense exercise, and now we have the first P.
Yes. The first P is paced breathing. So a lot of folks have heard of deep breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, where the point or belly breathing, where the point is to take very deep breaths into your belly. So making sure the air goes all the way down your abdomen rather than just breathing into your shoulders or your chest. So taking deep breaths. And then that in and itself can cue your body that you're safe because when you're stressed, you start breathing really shallow and faster as a way to help that fight or flight response. And when you take deep breaths, it counteracts that. One of the specific things in paced breathing that we want to do is also elongate the exhale. And that's also where the paced come in. If we time our breath to be in a set pattern where the exhale is longer than the inhale and it's equal. So a really common one is breathe in for 4 seconds and breathe out for 6 seconds. That can be helpful for calming the heart down because in your exhale, your heart rate slows a little bit every time you exhale compared to every time you inhale. So paced is finding a pace that feels good to you, that feels if you feel capable of following, and then breathing in that way for a minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes. But that can definitely be a specific way to help you calm down using your breath.
Excellent. Excellent. And these are all things, as I take notes here, it occurs to me it's probably wise to practice some of these things quite possibly before you have potentially like a full-blown onset of symptoms, just so that one can be a bit more acclimated to some of the sensations, so that these new sensations may not necessarily add to any existing anxiety that you're already feeling.
Hmm.
But and I'm assuming that's probably accurate, but I'll leave it to your expertise to.
Yeah, no, your intuition is totally correct there.
Yeah.
I think there's two reasons for that. One is it's like practicing for sport before the game or practicing the piano before a recital. Like the more you practice these skills outside of times you're feeling overwhelmed, the easier it will be for you to actually use them when times when you're panicked, right? But then not only that, especially for skills like paced breathing, it's kind of like meditation and mindfulness in general. The more you're used to practicing that skill and activating the parasympathetic nervous system and being in that calm state, the more your body will like recognize that state and associate it with the skill, like the paced breathing. And so it people often have the lived experience of if they regularly practice paced breathing, they can calm down much faster using paced breathing in the middle of stress or overwhelm.
Excellent. And what is the fourth and final letter? It's a P in the
Yes,
TIP
another
acronym.
P. Yeah, it's paired muscle relaxation, also commonly called progressive muscle relaxation. And the key of this one, again, is like you're diving into the stress response by tightening all of your muscles. So the way that your muscles naturally tighten in that fight or flight response, you're diving into that and purposely tightening muscle groups and then purposefully relaxing them. So it's easier to get to that relaxed state when you go into the tension first. So that's the muscle relaxation part of it. And then the progressive is to go through your body systemically. So either from your head down to your feet or your feet up to your head, going through each muscle group in the body, tightening and then relaxing. And then the thing that DBT adds to make it the paired is to think to yourself, relax in your head as you relax the muscles. It's a way to kind of get more of that conditioning that the more you practice PMR, by breathing in and tensing, and then breathing out and letting go of that tension throughout your body, saying to yourself, relax. The quicker you can do that across time, the more your body gets used to this idea of like, I'm safe here. I can purposefully let go of this.
It almost sounds, from a layman's perspective, like you're programming your subconscious a little bit. Relax, relax, be calm, and maybe having an impact on one's subconscious mind potentially too, which I guess I could imagine is helpful.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's subconscious for sure, and getting at the mind-body connection. That so often it feels like we have more control, feels like we have more control over our thoughts than our body systems, right? But humans, through the tip skills and some other things, actually have power to impact our unconscious body systems through the nervous system, regulation systems, like I'm describing. And the more you do it, the more you pair with these thoughts of like, okay, I'm going to try to calm down now, the more you increase that mind body connection and can take advantage of it for sure.
Okay, so in summary, temperature, intense exercise, paced breathing, paired muscle relaxation or progressive muscle relaxation,
Mhm.
and the paired part is an incantation of sorts where you're verbalizing a word like relax as well.
Yeah, right. Whatever works for you. But yeah.
Okay, this is excellent. Now, a lot of individuals will become somewhat obsessive with be it checking the stock price, hey, what's my crypto trading at? And I'm wondering specifically to say obsessive thoughts and maybe even sleeplessness. Now, these would be somewhat more acute manifestations that may not necessarily feel like anxiety in the traditional sense of fight or flight,
Hmm.
but where an individual just finds themselves constantly refreshing the screen and, you know, they're just like in a loop. And I'm wondering if DBT, right, dialectical behavioral therapy, might offer some tools specifically to break some of those cycles so someone can maybe find a little bit of additional peace at mind at night and just throughout their day.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. There are a number of skills, and I can walk through some of them. The thing I will mention is if this is maybe a good point to say, like, if you are feeling like you are checking your investments so frequently that it's causing you distress or like problems in your daily life, or like you are having insomnia in a way that's negatively impacting your daily life, that both of those might be cues to definitely try to find a licensed therapist who specializes in either DBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. There are cognitive CBT is absolutely evidence-based and has research supporting it for both insomnia and anxiety, which is what you're describing. So if it's getting to the point where these skills aren't enough, like there is definitely help for you there. And I can tell you some resources, Stephen, that you can put in the show notes for
Sure.
folks to get connected to like well-trained CBT therapists. But in the meantime, the types of skills that can be helpful is are oh my gosh, there's a few. I will say the tip skills are helpful for these things. Like so often it might not feel like physiological anxiety, but a lot of times the racing thoughts or compulsions or insomnia are related to nervous system agitation. So I will say that tip skills still might be useful. Um, but from there, other skills that can be helpful It'll depend on whether it's insomnia versus compulsively checking, etc. But there are other distress tolerance skills, specifically ones that I think can be really useful for getting out of racing thoughts, or if you're worrying about investments. Again, try to get into your body and out of the thoughts. And a specific skill besides T.I.P.P that can be helpful for that is distraction through physical sensations. So a lot of people, not in DBT, but this overlaps with skills that are often called grounding skills. So moving your body, certainly, like in T.I.P.P, but also trying, if you're really overwhelmed and stuck in thoughts, using intense physical sensations like eating a ginger chew or squeezing a stress ball or even holding ice if you're very overwhelmed, or smelling incense or any kind of using any of your senses, but giving yourself intense physical input, not harmful or hurtful input, but anything that gets you out of your mind and into your body, and like feeling those physical sensations or smelling or hearing or whatever can be incredibly helpful to have that first, like pulling you out of the worry. From there, I encourage folks to kind of go into more of what we would call an emotion regulation skill in opposite action, of opposite action. So this is an emotion regulation skill for when we are acting in ways usually in line with an emotion, in this case, maybe anxiety or stress about the market. And it's causing us to act in ways that aren't helpful for us. So, whether it's repeatedly thinking about investments while we're in bed and trying to sleep, or compulsively checking in a way that isn't actually helping us, it's making us more anxious, essentially, giving us that feedback loop. Opposite action is noticing that and doing the opposite to those urges. Much easier said than done. And this is where therapists can be really helpful. But so this is not compulsively checking. And I think this brings us to one of the other big things I wanted to talk to you about or recommend to folks is really beyond like these acute moments of stress. I think one of the biggest things that can be helpful for folks is doing pleasant and value-based activities in your life outside of investment. So when investing is a big part of your life, it makes it a bigger deal when you lose money or when something doesn't go your way, right? But if you can make your life bigger outside of investment, doing things that give you pleasure, doing things that are fun, new hobbies, learning new things, connecting with friends, working towards goals outside of investment. When you have more going on in your life outside of investment, it makes it easier to cope with the things that investment throws at you that are really stressful, right? And so this is a thing you do across time to make it easier to cope. But then once you have those hobbies and value-based goals that you're working towards in mind, in the moments of stress, when something isn't going well, when you're feeling anxious, when you're having trouble sleeping, not at night, but in general, you can say, okay, rather than checking compulsively, I'm going to go and do this thing, this pleasant thing, this hobby, engage in this thing that's important to me as a way to act opposite to the urges to compulsively check. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think everything you've outlined is exceptionally actionable. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Otherwise, what we can do is I will add links to some of your other broadcasts, which really dive into some of these topics in far more detail. And I think that could be very useful for individuals for whom this has been something of a, hey, some of that sounds really interesting. I'd like to dig into it some more. Great. There will be links in the description to this broadcast so that people can do that. But yeah, absolutely. I think this is I've noticed that a lot of people you could become very absorbed your identity in, hey, what's my net worth or how are my investments doing? And I get judged by my peer group based on how successful or not I'm perceived to be. And I've observed situations where people, it's as if though their sense of self can get shattered if
Mm-hmm.
if an investment goes sideways, and then they find themselves really at a loss for how to sort of function. So, and
Mm-hmm.
as you said, yeah, I mean, in extreme situations, yeah, like working with a licensed therapist, I think can do wonders. I want to reiterate what you said there. I want to be respectful of your time. I deeply, deeply appreciate everything that you've shared. Any closing thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I think I would just encourage people to look out the resources if they learned anything from this. I shared, 6 or 7 skills, I'd say, and DBT has almost 100. So there's a lot of distress tolerance, emotion regulation, but then also mindfulness and interpersonal effectiveness. There's a lot there. They're basically like life skills. Um, and when I encourage folks to make their lives bigger than investment, it means nothing against investment, to be absolutely clear. Like, still do that and engage with this thing that's important to you and then obviously very helpful and fulfilling in obvious ways. But it's just about adding on to give you a bigger life, even.
Okay, Dr. Kiki Fehling, thank you so very much for joining me today. This has been a really wonderful conversation. I believe you can be found across social media. Correct me if I'm wrong, DBT Kiki. And
That's correct.
we'll sort of spell that out in print as well, but be it TikTok, YouTube, DBT Kiki. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed today's interview. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. Listen, check out the description to today's broadcast for links to resources as well as to additional broadcasts provided by Dr. Fehling that go into more detail about some of the topics we discussed today. Remember, if you want to be a top-notch trader, in my opinion, you have to be able to manage your emotional state. And the things that we talked about today, I think, are a very good step in that direction. Okay, my friend, let's stay positive, let's be great, and we'll see each other again soon.